Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about which wattage do you need for your tank. So you probably asked yourself, and that's why you clicked on this video, what wattage do I need for my tank, for my lizard or snake? Do I need a 50 watt? Do I need a 100 watt? Do I need a 75 watt? Do I need a 25 watt? And the answer to that is it depends. It depends on the room temperature of your house, how large the enclosure is, how far away is the lamp to the basking spot. It depends on where you live. Do you live in Alaska? Do you live in Texas? Do you live in Mexico? So a lot of factors will go into this, but I will help you dial in the correct temps and get the right wattage you need. And you may be like me, I live in Oklahoma. It's very different all seasons. It's super cold during the winter. It's super hot during the summer. So actually during the summer, I use 50 watts, and during the winter, I use 100 watts to heat my tank. I actually switch between the two. And even though I use 100 watts and my bearded dragons and lizards are in brumation, the 100 watts doesn't even get to the desired temperatures, but they're in brumation, so it doesn't matter. It just kind of mimics a natural day for them in the winter time. But the air is just so dry and so cold. It's already winter. However, if I use this one, it wouldn't heat up the air that much or the basking spot at all. So even though I said it depends, you can start off with your enclosure with different types of bulbs. Say if you have a desert lizard, most of the time for like a 40 gallon, which is a 36 by 18 by 18 inch enclosure, you can start off with like a bearded dragon, a desert lizard who needs a basking spot of around 100 degrees. You can start off with a 100 watt bulb for that tank. Now, if you have a 4 by 2 by 2 tank, which is a very large enclosure, 120 gallons, you most likely for an arid type enclosure need two of these, two 100 watts. Or if it's like most screen top enclosures, the heat will escape. And this is very important because there's two types of enclosures. One with the top is closed and there's just vents all along the sides. And there's ones with just screen tops where you put the lights on top of the enclosure and there's ventilation, a lot of ventilation, and heat rises. So when the heat rises, you're gonna be losing a lot. It's gonna be harder to heat. So for like my closed top enclosures, even during the summertime, I have all of my enclosures for my Uramastics, which needs a 120 degree basking spot, very hot. I use two 50 watt bulbs on thermostat dimming. That's right. You would think I would need like 150 watts to get that desired temperature. No, even in my open top enclosure of my Uramastics, I use a 75 watt and a 100 watt bulb, and that gets to the desired temperatures. But my Uramastics with a screen top enclosure is up high. It's a stacked enclosures and it's the top one. So the heat rises. So I don't need to use strong bulbs to get my desired temperatures. So this is very important for whatever lizard or reptile you have. They usually have a basking spot temp or a temperature they want to be at. And it always is around like 90 to 100 degrees. Now, if you have a crested gecko, different story, but usually most of the time you don't need a heat bulb for a crested gecko. And if you do, you would need it to get to a certain temperature. So you want, for a crested gecko, you want like an extremely low wattage lamp. I would recommend like a Zilla 25 watt halogen, and then you could just raise it up, like put it on top of something, or get a lamp holder and raise it up high. So that way the top kind of does get a basking spot, because some people, surprisingly, I get this a lot, some people do live inside their houses like 58 degrees. Crazy. So that is a little cold for a crested gecko. But for instance, that's the same thing you would do for a lot of other things. Say you live in like California, you don't use any, or Texas, you don't use any air conditioning. You're a crazy man. I like it. You don't use any air conditioning, so it's very easy for you to get high temperatures with low wattage bulbs, and that's perfectly fine. Now, sometimes you might be like, well, what if like it's already hot and it was like 90 degrees, and you know, most of the time if it's 90 degrees, you can use an extremely low like watt, or you get a dimmer. That's the best way to do it. You get a 50 watt bulb with a dimmer and just put it on the basking spot to get that little area to the desired temperatures, and make sure the cool side doesn't get too hot. And if it does get too hot, but you still need to get that basking spot to like 103, and the other cool side's getting just a little too hot, you can put a fan on it. There's computer fans. I've used them in my enclosures. They're pretty cheap. They're like 10 bucks. You can plug it into a USB port or plug it into like a USB plug-in box and then plug it into the wall, and that will cool down the cool side of the enclosure, so that way your lizards can still go over and cool down. But essentially all a heat lamp is just trying to mimic the sun on a good summer day when lizards are active, and just shining on a spot to get the lizard to a desired internal temperature. And every reptile does have like a different preference. So like snakes are a little different, some other lizards are different. Like I said, crested geckos like it very cool, but if it's too cool, that can be bad. Bearded dragons and Uramastics, for example, like it very hot. So you need to kind of get a high wattage lamp. But if you live in Texas in the summertime, you're, inside of your house might be 85 degrees, so you don't have to get a high wattage lamp at all. You could get a 50 watt lamp and that'll do the job for you. But like I said, back to people who don't use air conditioning, and this just goes for everyone, period. You have your lamp and you're getting desired temperatures, but it's getting too hot. What do? Well, you get a thermostat. Now, I've been using Reptiles dimming thermostat for a couple of months, but I still haven't made a video on it, and I do like it a lot, but I just noticed it's not available on Amazon right now. It might come into stock pretty soon, but I like it because it dims the bulbs when it gets too hot. So what this is this makes sure it's a safety net for your enclosure. So if it does get too hot on the basking spot or around the basking spot in your enclosure, it will shut your lamp off and you don't have to worry about cooking your bearded dragon or your lizard, snake. Bearded dragon just came to mind first. Whatever reptile you have, it will make sure it doesn't get cooked and it will shut off the heat lamp for you. So plug your heat lamp into this, put the temperature probe around the basking spot. Some people put it on the wall. I kind of like to hide mine around the basking spot because they are just kind of ugly. Now, don't hide it too good. You don't want to bury it or anything like that. You kind of want to let it hit the air temperature. You could, if for new people, I advise kind of put it around the basking spot, not on the basking spot, because a lizard will come, lay on top of it, throw it off. You kind of want it around it. Like I said, some people put it on the walls. I like to put mine kind of like underneath the wood, right by it, kind of pointing at the basking spot. That way, and then measure the air temperature. So when you get your desired temperature, your max temperature you want your lamp to shut off at, right? Say it's 115 degrees. When you get your thermometer gun, you read it, it's 115 degrees. Whatever this says when you read it, on this, it's gonna measure the temperature of wherever you put this in the cage. Whatever this says, write it down, and then do that for a week. So that way, every time it hits 115 on the basking spot, a rock, wherever it may be, if this is 98, you know to set this at 98. So that way, when you set this at 98, every time it hits 98, it means that the basking spot is 115. It'll shut the lamp off. So that way you don't have to worry about overheating your bearded dragon. Thermostats are really important, and you definitely need them because it helps it. You don't want to burn your house down. You don't want to, burn your lizard up. So this is the protection against that. But one thing I noticed, like I said, is people just can't get the hot enough temperatures. A lot of times for bearded dragons, for your mastics, wherever it may be. If you hear a cricket, I'm sorry, my cricket started breeding and they're going crazy, forgive me. But now that we have upgraded in the reptile hobby to larger enclosures, people are like, I have a 100 watt basking bulb. I have, even 2 of them, and it's not getting hot enough. What do I do? Well, this is what you can do. You're trying to get this rock to 115 degrees, right? And your lamp is on it up here. Sometimes you might have to mount this inside of your 4x2x2 so it's lower. That means that the heat's not, it's farther away. It's gonna take way longer to get this to the desired temperature. When you start putting it a little closer, now you don't want it too close. You don't want to burn your dragon. You don't want it like this close where it's like right on top of your dragon. Let's say it's a little closer. Like some people like to mount it inside the 4x2x2, and that way you can get it to the proper temperatures. It's closer, it's gonna provide heat, and you can do it like that. Or, my favorite way of doing it, you can raise the basking spot. So you start stacking some rocks, you get some wood, you start bring your basking spot to the lamp. And that's a better way. And so technically you can have maybe, well, air temperature wise, you still do it, but you can use lower wattage lamps and save on your electricity bill by doing it this way with 2 heat lamps. Now, say you live in Alaska and it's just so cold, your house is drafty, you might have to use 3 lamps, And it's okay because your basking area is a basking area. The one thing you have to do is just make sure your cool side is cool. Whatever you do to get the desired temperatures on your hot side, you need to make sure that your lizard, reptile, or whatever you have can go and cool down. So like I said, I know it's kind of complicated because if your room temperature is just hotter, you're gonna, use weaker wattage bulbs. If it's colder, you're gonna probably have to use higher wattage bulbs. And that's just the way it goes. You have to dial it in to find out. There is no straight answer because if I gave you a straight answer, everyone's house is different. Everyone's, room temperatures are different. So your room temperature might be perfect for you at 80 degrees. Someone else is living in a house that's 68 degrees. That's vastly different. And inside your terrarium, the inside temperatures are going to be different as well. But for most 40 gallons, for like arid enclosures, obviously the 100 watt will work. If you have tropical enclosures, a 50 watt will work. You do have to start somewhere. And for tropical enclosures, I like to start at 50 watt. And for, you know, desert enclosures, I like to start at 100 watts. So if you have a desert lizard, you can go ahead and start at 100 watts and then work way around it. If you're in a harder location, you'll realize you'll probably have to drop down in wattage. And I know it's expensive and it sucks, but that's just the way it is. Just trying to get temps right is like all part of just being a keeper in the reptile hobby. Getting temps right is just like almost like, you know, your dragon's just sitting there pretty much keeping a lizard or a reptile. It's like mainly just getting temps right and getting the care right down. And then finally you get to watch your dragon or your lizard. I keep on saying your dragon, forgive me. I mean reptile. But yes, and I hope this was helpful. I know it was a lot of information, and forgive me. I feel like, you know, it's a pretty difficult subject to talk about because it depends on a lot of factors. And I'm sorry I cannot give you just a definite answer of like, oh, you need 100 watt. But like I said, you can start with desert stuff, you know, 100 watt, tropical stuff, 50 watt. There's a starting point, but you might need to up it. Every lizard has a desired temperature they want to be at, and you're pretty much just trying to pick a wattage of lamp that gets that lizard to the desired temperatures. So that's all I have for heating your reptile enclosure. I hope I helped. If I did, like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. If you have any questions, you can join my Discord or drop them down below and I will answer those.